right, everybody. I hope you're back. I feel like I don't know, like an actor at the Chesapeake Shakespeare Theater in the green room, and as the clock's ticking down, you're watching it going, oh man, here we go. So we're back. Jessica, do we get anybody signed? Do we still have 5 slots left for the lightning talks, or do we give people a grace period?
We currently have 2 slots left.
2 slots left. All right, people, come on. It is inconceivable that we still have 68 people on this Zoom call, and it is inconceivable that at least 2 of you don't have a super idea or a quandary that you're pondering over that you desperately need to share with us in the lightning talk. So, Jessica, maybe can we give people another like 10 minutes? Are you okay with that?
I am A-okay.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I think we got the drill down. We're in our 3rd session, and I am going to turn it over to Rob to talk about Confederate memorials and Columbus memorials. Rob, wherever you are on the little Hollywood square.
Here I am. Thanks, Johns.
Yeah.
Hello, it's good to see you all this morning. I'm Rob Schoberlein, a member of the Unconference Organizing Committee, and I'm going to lead the discussion. I'm employed by the Maryland State Archives and serve presently as the acting Baltimore City Archivist under a memo of understanding. My research and publications have focused mostly on Civil War era social history and reform movements in the late and 20th century mental health care. I'm a trustee of the Maryland Center for History and Culture, formerly known as the Maryland Historical Society, and sit on its library committee and publications committee. I'm going to start with a short story that relates to the fortunes of a Baltimore Civil War monument that has been left out of all the history books. I'm going to take about 5 minutes. You'll get the long view, even a longer view than whatever you might have right now. It'll help to inform you. In 1866, the German Union Club of Maryland erected Baltimore's first Civil War monument. The club was a group of naturalized German-American citizens and some aliens for the most part. The monument celebrated the memory of Maryland's Unionist governor, Thomas Holliday Hicks, who many thought helped prevent Maryland from seceding. It was an enormous, heavy marble bust mounted on a pedestal. The monument's organizers were drawn from the ranks of what was called the Unconditional Unionist Party. They believed in the immediate emancipation of all the enslaved and the disenfranchisement of all Marylanders who had served in the Confederate Army. The club first offered the completed work to the city of Baltimore. However, the city supposedly denied the sculpture a place in any of the squares or parks. It appeared that the club had no alternative but to locate the monument on private land. Rost's Garden, a pleasure park connected to Georg Rost's brewery on Belair Road, just below North Avenue, served as its first home. With the growth of the city and the redevelopment of the land, it ultimately necessitated the removal of the monument in 1896. The Baltimore city government, under then Republican Mayor Hooper, the Democrats had been in control since the Civil War. Many former Confederate and Southern sympathizers had been in city government. Basically, he came forward with assistance. The city council passed a resolution to fund the dismantling, removal, and storage of the statue. It was in a marble work in West Baltimore for a number of years. At the same time, though, the Baltimore City Art Commission was directed to find a suitable site in a public park or square for the monument's permanent home. Finding a permanent home was difficult. On the advice of the City Art Commission, an offer was made to the Maryland Historical Society. The society would take it as a work of art and not a historical object, but in the end rejected the offer. The reasons given: its large space, its deteriorated condition, and the lack of gallery space. Ultimately, it was the Maryland Institute, known today as the Maryland Institute College of Art, or MICA, that agreed to serve as the final location. It was in a very visible, desirable space in its harbor building. It had resided originally down at Baltimore's harbor at the main staircase on the landing there. Wonderful. So the rededication took place 1898. None of the newspapers covered it. But it was a short-lived sanctuary because the Great Baltimore Fire destroyed the Maryland Institute, and the building collapsed upon itself, and everything was destroyed. Its sculpture collection, its archives. Anyway, so a few takeaways. For this particular monument, the city rejected because it probably didn't want to inflame the sectional wartime passions very much still alive in the city. Similarly, in 1880, when a proposal to erect a Confederate monument gained the support of the city council, then Mayor Ferdinand Latrobe rejected the idea because he did not want to reopen old wounds or have it as a lingering point of friction between former foes. The second takeaway, monuments have been moved. They've been moved all the time in the history of the city. Third, museums have their own constraints to consider, especially when considering accepting objects. And four, politics always come into play in the history of monument placement. Now, we're moving on. I think what we're going to do, because this is such a broad topic, Confederate monuments are a little bit different than the Columbus monuments. We're going to talk about the Confederate monuments first. They're already down for the most part. So what to do with them? As of June 2020, government officials around the country have removed 106 Confederate symbols since 2015, when a white supremacist gunman killed 9 black worshipers at a church in Charleston, South Carolina. Of those 106 symbols, 64 were monuments, and just four of those were relocated. The rest are out in storage. In August of 2017, Baltimore's 4 Confederate monuments were brought down overnight under the orders of then Mayor Catherine Pugh. That came in response to the violence and death of a protester during the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. However, as early as 2015, there had been plans to remove 2 of those monuments. Many might think that a monument would or perhaps should take them, or maybe a Confederate cemetery or a battlefield might be a better place. Museums, which might seem like the obvious choice, are often hesitant to take them for many reasons. Christy Coleman, the CEO of the Civil War Museum in Richmond, I think that was the Museum of the Confederacy before, basically offers some insights. Museums aren't able to accept them. They simply can't afford to take care of them. When you take artifacts on or things that skew one's mission or collection direction or resources towards something that you know strays from strategic work, it's problematic. Even if a museum could accommodate the cost and logistics, contextualizing the statues are a challenge, considering how racially and politically charged the objects still are. Anyway, even if a museum was willing to take on these risks, the statues are often too large to fit comfortably within a permanent exhibition. Many museums do not have outdoor space to accommodate them. So then what's to be done with the Confederate monuments? Putting them back in the places where they stood does not seem to be a viable option in 2020. So let's just take that off the table for today's discussion. Some people have suggested just destroying them. That's the easiest path to take. Others think that returning them to Confederate heritage organizations that in many cases paid for them in the first place is a better idea. Some have suggested that the statue of Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson should be placed on a federally administered battlefield, such as Chancellorsville or Antietam. Still, some advocate for a different, less hallowed setting, so to speak. Could the monuments be placed in some open air setting in a place set apart, such as you might find in certain former Eastern Bloc countries where the statues of deposed leaders of former regimes just sit there, rust and decay? What is to be done? What if the city put a Confederate statue up for sale, like that was done in Dallas? In 2019, city leaders sold this statue of Robert E. Lee in an online auction for $1.4 million to a local billionaire. That statue now resides on a private golf course near the Mexican border. So what do you think should be done? Anybody?
Trash heap.
This is something that my name is Katie. I am a former student of MICA. I just graduated 2 years ago. I work now as a 3D scanning specialist at Direct Dimensions. And I have a great interest in recording these sculptures in all of their states. I will show a little bit more in my lightning talk, but to me, I think the job in a way hasn't been done fully in removing the sculptures from their locations. Their plinths often still stand, and in a way still are a reminder of what once stood there. So I think in addition to removing the bronze, we should also consider removing the marble plinths from which they've stood, because in a way they remind more of the history through their text and their markers, and provide us a place where it almost seems like the problem is only half figured out. It's a lot more easy to remove the marble or the bronze than it is the granite or the marble. So I think right now, I believe the bronzes are being held in an undisclosed location under a tarp, according to the Baltimore Sun. But I still think that more needs to be done to remove the sculptures from their locations.
I just want to chime in. You had mentioned something. So what to place on the now empty plinths or pedestals? Some have suggested Baltimore ought to have monuments to remind people of more neglected chapters of history, Civil War history, such as the efforts of Black Union soldiers. Basically, I've got an idea, for the most part, where the Confederate women statue had been in Baltimore. People have wholly neglected the works of Union sympathizing women in the city, both Black and white. During the Civil War, Baltimore hosted 7 major military hospitals, and women's groups formed at each facility. Somewhere between 50 to 75 neighborhood women volunteered as nursing aides at the hospital. Women were also instrumental in what was called the Union Relief Rooms, which were right near Camden Yards. And in the course of the war, they estimated that the women and fed close to 1 million soldiers, Southern refugees, returning POWs. No one hears anything about that. Well, the thing is, though, to put new monuments on the plinths would be one idea. Another idea is artwork, but I don't want to monopolize this. Any other comments?
I would say that at the Walters, we recently had a talk with Ada Kingston, who is an artist based in Baltimore who works and has been working with monuments and using them as places for kind of interventions and sort of reimagining what those monuments, especially the ones that have been taken down, could be. I will also say at the Walters, we have just reopened to the public, and we have personally edited some of our wall text for our exhibition that talks about the founders of the Walters, who, while they were not like necessary, they were definitely really into the Confederacy and some avowed secessionists. We also have to spend some more time talking about where their wealth came from, as they were mostly dry goods and liquor importers from the South. So who was doing the labor that built the wealth that they had. So it's exciting to see our institution, I think, take a little bit more responsibility in telling that story in a more transparent and honest way. But I know that it's also been really tricky for us to kind of figure out how we're going to navigate these pieces of history that have been relevant for a long time, but now the conversation has kind of nationally shifted much more to a more critical lens on history and how it's being presented.
Elizabeth.
So I'd like to
Okay.
speak on that. So of probably maybe of this whole group, there's probably about 9 or 10 African Americans. So I pause to speak for all African Americans. I can only speak from my own personal opinion and my own observations. So I'll say that first. When the discussion of the Baltimore monuments were on debate about what should be done, I've never been one to say to take them away, which put me on the opposite side of most of my African American peers and colleagues. I think, and the reason why is I think that there's always been enough space. As they say, there's abundance in the universe, and there's always been enough space, is to, as you mentioned, Rob, is to place something that is of the opposition next to that. So keeping that space there and then putting something of the opposition that shows that there are two sides to the coin. There's two sides to the story. And that was not done. That was my theory. And the reason why I hold firm to that is because I really believe that when you take things away, it goes out of the conscious mind and it's forgotten. And then we find ourselves in a situation where we are today, because everything that has happened historically has always been there, but some people have chosen to forget it. One, it is sometimes too painful to remember, and sometimes it is assimilate and go forward. And I think that as African Americans, we're able to, some of us were able to become more educated and to assimilate into more of a Eurocentric community and society. We forgot those people that fought long and hard for us to have the privilege and the right to be equals to our white counterparts, or to obtain wealth and education. So putting those two things together is a reminder to all of us that the Confederate did exist. What did it stand for? What did it mean? But who were the people that made sure that they did not have all of the master power? And I think that that's a better solution than just to take them away and try to erase it. And that is why we are in a tremendous conflict with this administration, because there's an assumption that we are trying to erase it. We are not trying to erase it. We are trying to bring light to it, that it was not an equal and fair system for those that were enslaved or oppressed. That's one opinion. Now, Lauren Chisnick is here, I believe, and she and I had a very a challenging time for us as Baltimore preservation and conservationists of the history, is when somebody debates the Francis Scott Key statue in Bolton Hill. They damaged something that belonged to the city. They poured paint on it, they drew on it. Now, the problem with that is, first of all, it wasn't clear why they did it. It isn't clear what was the statement. Was the statement to say that Francis Scott Key wrote the Star Spangled Banner and the third and the fourth stanza of the poem was awful? Or was it about a former slave owner who also defended slaves in trials? So when you do things like that, you are taking, the story is not clear. the narrative, the interpretation of it. So it was really heartfelt to see how they had taken that statue and defaced it like that, and then, but without reason or without knowledge of why. What is your intention? What was your intention in doing that? So that kind of gets me to the point of the Christopher Columbus issue. When you threw Christopher Columbus into the inner harbor, what was your statement? It's not just that Christopher Columbus was a horrible person when he arrived here and, violated the Native Americans. What is your story? Because really, the Italian Americans have a right to be in this country and have their own idols and that is their memory, like we have the right to have Thurgood Marshall or Harriet Tubman. That's the point. Everybody has a right. This is what our problem is right now, is that we are fighting over whose territory and who belongs to what. It belongs to all of us. Our history is as bad as it may be. It belongs to all of us, and we have to be responsible and accountable for that history. So that's my point on it. I'm sorry if I rambled on, but that's my thinking.
I'd like to chime in on that. One of the things I don't like is to destroy the statues. I don't think they should be destroyed. However, I don't have an issue with some of them being taken down, but I think they should be saved. I think they still need to be part of the conversation about our history as a country. So I think they absolutely need to be saved somewhere. I know that it was mentioned that a lot of museums don't have the room for them, but I feel like there has to be some type of maybe an outdoor museum that has, like almost like a park where they have these statues, but it's not like a park to enjoy, just to be enjoying these statues being there. No, it needs to be like a museum where somebody is actually giving tours and giving the information about where these statues came from, why they were built, when they were built, because quite a few of them were built during the Jim Crow era. And so that needs to be said. But I do not believe that these, the men and it's mostly men that have these statues have been built to, I do not look at them as heroes. And so that's my opinion on it. I don't see them as heroes at all. To me, it's like looking at Hitler as a hero. And so, like I said, I don't honor them, but at the same time, I don't think they should be destroyed.
You brought up Hitler, and I was just thinking, I was looking on certain German websites, newspapers, and for the most part, of course, when the Allies came into Germany, they destroyed all the Nazi monuments. I think they did, I should say. It wasn't until later on that certain German army memorials came up, but I understand one in the northern part of Germany gets routinely defaced. And in terms of all of the military strategists, Rommel, I understand there are no statues like that around. In fact, I just also read that there's been a movement in Germany. Somehow anyone who had been connected with the Second World War in the army, they had barracks and things named after these people. They're removing all of those names right now. Just a little as an aside.
Hi, Rob. It's
Yeah.
Pat Anderson. How are you?
Yeah. Fine, fine. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Just a comment. In 2017, the American Historical Association issued a statement on what to do with the monuments. And if you haven't read it, let me know. I'm happy to I'll email it to Rob and he can share it. But basically what the whole concept is to basically, even if they're removed, before they're removed or as they're removed, just to make sure that the whole area is documented, like take photographs of how it was in its quote original state, which I think was a really important thing to do. I don't know like what to do with them physically right now, but I agree with Shantae and everybody else that this is a chapter in an ongoing story. And really that Civil War and the Reconstruction Amendments, it was just a hiccup in time. It wasn't that long ago. And we have this shameful history that we all have to try to work with and through as a group if there's going to be understanding, compassion, healing, reconciliation, all these things that were discussed the other evening in the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission meeting. So I think if there's a way to just think bigger picture and to document what we can document, I know that, yeah, I know Rob, you and I have worked together for a long time. And when this all started, one of the initial conversations was rather than take them down, let's add some context. But then everything happened really quickly and there was no, that was not a step. But I think we can continue to add context and then, you know, as historians, which is truly, you know, a blessing, we've got a long view of the past and we can see that things are going to continue to evolve. And I just think at this point in time, we have a responsibility to everybody to just maintain it. And as Shantae said, let's get it into context so that we can, this is just going to sound corny, but you know, I have a lot of grandchildren in my life and I want this to be, you know, just a more inclusive world for them, a more inclusive country for them the further we go. So anyway, I rambled a bit, but I agree completely. There has to be a way to integrate all of these pieces into one narrative so that we can continue to work together and be responsible caretakers and etc. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I had a couple comments. Hi, I'm Lauren and I work for, I'm a historic preservation planner in the city and I was one of the staff people for the Mayor's Commission on Public Confederate Monuments here in Baltimore, which was established by Stephanie Rawlings-Blake, Mayor Rawlings-Blake in 2015. You know, this commission actually, 5 years ago, this was such a different landscape, you know, and I mean, people really weren't really thinking about it as much. You know, certainly some folks were, but, you know, and then what ultimately happened was, you know, the commission, you know, we have a lot of public meetings. You know, I think the thing that we thought was so important was to have it be as inclusive and have as many people participate and say what they felt and say what they wanted for these monuments. And there was such a broad range of opinions. And ultimately the commission recommended removing 2 of them because they weren't related to Baltimore, Lee Jackson and Roger B. Tawney, and then keeping the Soldiers and Sailors and Confederate Women's, which frankly, from, you know, a messaging standpoint and ideological standpoint are far more damaging. I mean, the Confederate Women's monument is of a pieta. It looks like, you know, it's visually replicating Mary holding dying Christ, except it's a Confederate soldier lying on a bed of wheat, and wheat is a symbol of the resurrection. I mean, that monument said the South shall rise again, right? So like really from that ideological standpoint, really far more problematic. But the commission recommended getting rid of the 2 that had nothing to do with Baltimore, keeping the 2 that did, but having interventions, having other art installations that engage in a conversation. You know, after Charlottesville, Mayor Pugh decided to take them all down because of the public safety, you know, removing the monuments, but leaving the plinths. And now there's a long engagement about what to do with the monuments and the plinths because 3 of the 4 of them are under easement with the Maryland Historical Trust. So, I mean, there are a lot of like layers of government going on. But one of the things that I have been so heartened to see is that even you know, in the past 5 years, there have been so many interventions at those sites, you know, people putting their own art, people putting, you know, their own spin on things, graffiti, performance art, everything, that there is a continued engagement with those plinths. And I don't know what the answer is should they go or should they stay? But I think the thing that I have found most heartening is that there is continued engagement and continued conversation by those plinths being there. And if those are taken away, what happens to that conversation? Where does it move to? How does it shift? I think, you know, I think that if we don't talk about these things if we don't continue to have a conversation about it, are we going to forget? Do we need to have those things in place, those tangible reminders or not? I don't know. And then just one last thing, I think that there is also a lot of difficulty as someone who is charged with helping maintain our monuments, as Shantae mentioned, with the Francis Scott Key Monument, but others, in Philly earlier this year, they have the Frank Rizzo Monument, or they had the Frank Rizzo Monument to a former mayor that was damaged, and the city got a lot of flack because their response was to immediately conserve it and protect it with police instead of protecting people who were protesting. And that is something that, as someone who is tasked to care for these monuments, I think about a lot, and people tag monuments with BLM, and I'm like, that's fine sitting there for a few days, because for me, people matter more. That is the most important thing, is people's life and safety, and also freedom of expression is the most important thing. But it's hard because I'm put in a place where my job is to ensure the protection of things. But my feeling is that, cleaning off that graffiti in 2 days or 5 days or 10 days versus right now, that can sit for a little bit. I don't know if that makes me a poor steward, but I think, I also think it's really important to read the room. And I think that Philly did a terrible job of that. Sorry, it's just easier to look at other places, but it's something that I constantly think about. Anyway, sorry for rambling. Thanks everybody. This is such a great convo.
I just want to jump in for a moment and to follow Lauren's, where the Lee Jackson statue now stood, the Tubman Grove. There are signs that add context to basically the space and what was there previously as well.
Picking up.
Well, I had to say that, wait, Michael, I just wanted to mention, we've been in shelter for so long, but I did have a conversation with someone, and maybe you've seen it if you've been downtown. We talked about monuments, and there's also this conversation nationally about changing military bases. But did anybody happen to notice what had to happen with the lightship? The Tawny had to be stripped of its name in downtown Baltimore. So that is another thing. It's not just the monuments, but we have all of these physical things that are connected to a very difficult conversation and history. So that's why I say sometimes trying to get rid of everything is probably more difficult than to have conversation and interpretation that tells the story and then adding something to it that is a absolute contradiction to those beliefs and that ideology of that time. So, and believe me, I know because I am residing in the H.L. Mencken house. And believe me, that is challenging because Mencken was a great guy in some ways, and what he wrote sometimes was not so nice. So we've got to get our head around this. How do we deal with these things that memorialize and that the people that others admire? Because so many people admire Mencken, but when I read about Mencken and what he said, I have pause. I have pause as an African American woman. So that's I will shut up and stop talking just from saying that.
Picking up on both Shantae and Lauren, if I might, and I agree with Shantae. I thought changing of the name of the ship that the Coast Guard pronounces Taney was a wrong thing to do. But and I was a strong advocate of the removal of the Lee Jackson statue, and I testified on that. The other three didn't bother me as much because I think they were essentially invisible. We don't talk about it. If we do a kind of Kevin Lynch image of the city analysis, thousands of people every day went by, tens of thousands perhaps, by the Confederate Women's Monument. Even more went down Mount Royal Avenue, where and who saw that? Who knew that those things were there? And so, I said, leave them there. Nobody sees them for one thing. But I'm delighted to hear that the plinths have become centers of activity and memorialization. But of course, we've got to bear in mind that right now, a lot of us in this gathering are in sympathy with the BLM signs and the other emphasis on social justice. They could equally, though, be a gathering of people that have different views from ours, and that's something that adds to this whole discussion. So it's a complex thing, and I'm enjoying sitting here seeing Shantae nodding. Thank you very much.
So it looks like Linda has had her hand up. Linda, do you want to go?
Yeah. I want to come around to what Dean posted, which pretty much expresses my view. He posted it in the chat that originally I was all in favor of reinterpretation. There does not, current activism notwithstanding, I have not over the long term seen a lot of engagement with monuments. It seems to me monuments register what we value, and they don't particularly register complexity or context. The conversation has shifted to a discussion of the way they do, but I don't have much optimism that that will sustain itself over the long term. And we will see monuments memorializing what we continue to value or don't have the will to devalue. I could be wrong, it's an open question to me. I don't state this pragmatically or emphatically, but that's based on so much of what I've taken in and heard over the last 5 years. That seems to be where I'm coming down.
I want to, I guess, expand on that and also politely push back on something Mike said. I think that invisibility is it's a construct of power. We think a lot about infrastructure being invisible, but where infrastructure is provisioned really depends on whether you notice it as being invisible or not. So if you switch on a light switch and you don't get the light, you notice it. It's not invisible anymore. It's not just something in the background. And I think we really need to pay attention to what other people think of as visible. So if people are seeing statues as being visible and racist in public space, that's something that needs to be acknowledged and not pushed to the background. For instance, I think the Highway to Nowhere is the most racist memorial we have in this city, but it's really easy to drive through it and not notice it at all. So I think for me, the question is really, how do we, value public space, and how do we value how people view and see it? And that needs to be a really important conversation here, because we're all sharing the space that these monuments are placed in.
I'd like to piggyback on what Linda was saying about, its history versus what we choose to lift up as a society. And I think it's also important to remember the, whether it's on state land, federal land, governmental type land, and personal private land. I'm not sure about how much context people historically have drawn from statues. They're a very visual reminder of, like what Linda said, of what is important and what's valued. And that inevitably changes throughout time. So in essence, it's not necessarily wrong to revisit this. I think it's obviously coming from a very personal time period. So it is a much more passionate response. But, you know, it should always be, what we memorialize should always be recontextualized and reconsidered. We're not the same country we were when some of the earliest monuments were put up. Countries that are hundreds of years old have changed what they stand for and what they choose to be in the future.
For me,
Now, we only have a few minutes left, but does anyone want to talk about the Columbus statues? The first one, the obelisk, it may have been the first one ever erected in the U.S. And the second one in Druid Hill Park was put up there in 1892 by Italian immigrants, their organizations, and that was the focal point of their celebrations. The third, of course, the plinth is empty. I'm just throwing that out there if anyone has any comments.
Well, I think the Columbus monuments and some people's feelings about them, kind of as Shantae mentioned before, speak to the way that monuments are used as like tools of identity building and nation building within a country. So for a lot of Catholic people, as well as Italian Americans, Columbus for a long time was this like character where American Catholics were trying to get like the first American Catholic saint. So Columbus was a big part of driving towards legitimizing Americans for other Catholics outside of America, but also legitimizing Catholics within America. So that identity for some people is something that they still haven't let go of. And that kind of thing is a thing that people, when you talk about like heritage or other things like that, I think that those would be the people that would come to the defense of Columbus. However, obviously Columbus did a lot of other things that are really completely indefensible. And so for other people who don't share with that kind of identity that he represented, to know what he did and what his legacy was in America and see that memorialized is very harmful and hurtful. So that's what I have to say about that. I think that overall it's not, I don't know, for me, I would say I don't think it is worth it to keep him around as a person that has been so memorialized in American culture in general.
I think a question I have just thinking about monuments generally is the future of figural or sculptural monuments that represent people. You know, because those representations of people they are representing ideologies, and you know, is this the right form anymore to honor people, or you know, I mean, I know modernism, you know, like went away from that, and I think some people don't like modernist art and artifacts, but you know, but thinking about that is what is the purpose of monuments generally? I mean, they're to uphold ideologies and ideas, but are those best represented with people anymore? Is that what is the future of that? And we do have a public art commission in Baltimore City that vets all new public art in the city, but just more theoretically, like do we honor people anymore sculpturally?
And murals are the new form today, and a lot of them put up not by formal commissions, but by individuals. And how do we preserve those?
Rob, I'm the bad guy timekeeper. There is not going to be any kind of good place to stop this conversation. Do you want to
take it away, Johnsy? Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. All right, I'm sorry, everybody. Maybe we should have like a whole like a unconference 2 and just on this topic or something. All right, we get 10 minutes to go grab your gourmet lunch or your heated up vegetable soup. And Jessica is going to lead us through our lightning talks. Is that right, Jessica? And are we at full 15 capacity?
We're at full 15 capacity.
Oh, hot dog. All right. This is going to be a wild ride. All right. See you in 10 minutes.
Molly, you're still sharing your screen and we can see your email. Just an FYI.
If you do need to change away the tab, you should be able to pause the screen sharing there.
Hey, Jessica, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Are people going to be able to share their screens during the lightning talks?
It depends on how your system's set up, but more than likely the people who don't have host access cannot share the screen.
Okay.
Unless if someone who's sitting here, if you could, someone could try.
I was going to jump in. This is Trisha. It looks like we do have access to share our screens, and I'm not a host. I'm just an attendee. So.
Oh, okay.
Great. So Trisha, when you clicked on it, did it say you can take it away from Molly just now?
Actually, yeah, I just clicked on it and it says, all it says is like, you cannot start sharing your screen while other participant is sharing. That's all. So
great. So that probably means
not sharing. Yeah.
Yeah. So Molly, that means that you have your account set up that way. That's great.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
so I'm going to stop sharing and
if
we want to try it again, or we can just wing it.
Oh, hello. All right, everybody, we're back. Thanks for hanging in there with us. We're still at 62 participants, which we should give out like little gold stars for Zoom marathoners. That whatever the title of that first session is, so nobody wants to go to your Zoom thing anymore. We are clearly the outliers in that framework. So, all right, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica, wherever Jessica's little box went, for our lightning talk. So feel free to turn your video off. I mean, we're happy to watch you eat lunch. If we were in person, we'd be watching you eat lunch anyway. So we're happy to watch you eat lunch. But if you want to turn your screen off or video off and just listen in, that's fine too. All right, Jessica, thanks.
All right, thanks, Johns. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Since it's officially afternoon, I am really impressed at how many people are still hanging on here. That's wonderful. It just, I think, goes to show what a great unconference it's been so far and how great the conversation's been. So I'm Jessica Selmer. I work at the Baltimore Museum of Industry. I'm the education manager there, and I'm on the planning committee. And so with these lightning talks, how it's going to work is we have 15 people who signed up. Everyone gets 2 minutes. I'm going to have a timer, and I will let announce who's first and then who's on deck so you can prepare. And then at the 2-minute timer, when the time's up, I will just interrupt you. So just maybe keep an eye if you want to run your own timer if you're talking, or you'd also don't have to take the whole 2 minutes. So I think that's fine too. So our first person is going to be Linda Shopes. So if you want to unmute yourself, and if you want to share your screen, we just discovered you should be able to do so. So if there's something that you want to bring up and show everyone, you'll just do that at the bottom. If you're on a laptop, it'll be at the bottom of your Zoom app, and you can just press share screen and it'll bring up with options of where you want to share that. If you need help.
I'm sharing this 2 minutes with Catherine Mayfield. So stop me at 1 minute.
Will do. All right. Go ahead, Linda.
Talk really fast. Thank you. I am Linda Shopes. I'm the co-chair with Catherine of the Local Arrangements Committee for the Oral History Association's 2020 annual meeting. As many of you know, the meeting was scheduled for Baltimore this fall. Well, it's still happening, but it's made a creative pivot to an all virtual conference via Zoom, Second Life, and other platforms. It's scheduled for October 19 through 24, and we welcome all of you. I'm going to post a link to the conference schedule and registration form, something like 130 panels, roundtables, listening sessions, performances, and workshops. Baltimore artist Joyce Scott is the keynote. It will be live streamed and open to the public, as will a couple of other events. The association is looking for volunteers to host Zoom sessions, edit real-time automated transcripts, and other tasks. I'm going to post a link to sign up to volunteer. If you volunteer, you get a complimentary, if you volunteer for 3 hours, you get a complimentary registration, so it's a good deal. Catherine and I have worked really hard to retain a local presence at the conference,
Linda,
so it's virtual. I'm going to turn it over to Catherine, who is going to talk about one of our specific local initiatives. Thanks.
Catherine, you have 28 seconds.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So we've got 2 local workshops that are coming up. We've got an introduction to oral history. There's 5 sessions that mirror the oral history process, from starting off a session on project planning, how to interview, technology, processing, and also how to using oral histories in podcasts and other ways. That is going to be led by 2 oral historians from the DC Oral History Collaborative. We're also doing a second workshop, Oral History in the Classroom, really aimed at educators. You can find more on the Oral History Association website. The classroom workshop is aimed, again, at educators. There's going to be a panel discussion featuring teachers talking about their experiences working with middle and high school students, and an overview as well of the oral history process.
Excellent. Time's up. Good job, ladies. All right, next up, Martha.
Thanks.
Your 2 minutes.
Thank you. I just really quickly, by now you all probably know that the Maryland Historical Society is operating under a new name and a new identity. We are the Maryland Center for History and Culture. And along with this rebrand, really the most exciting piece is enhanced digital access to our collections. So I just wanted to make all of you aware that if you go to our new beautiful website, which is mdhistory.org, you now have access to look through just a tiny percentage of what we have in our collection. Through this online database, we also have research guides and a new and improved finding aid database, in addition to educator resources and our library catalog. So for all of you who are doing research or want to collaborate or are putting on exhibitions or what have you, we just want to let you know about this new and improved resource and access to our collection. Lastly, I just also want to make you all aware of our Pathways Grant Program. Last year was the first year of this, and we are going to be launching the second season in a few weeks on October 2nd. Again, this is on our website. I know we're all looking for new funding streams constantly, and this is a really great opportunity to put together a proposal for capacity building projects. This is money that was designated to us by the legislative session a few years ago. And so we are basically just shepherding this money and re-granting it to smaller institutions. So I encourage you to look at that and hopefully we can help you fund your project. Thanks.
Great, Martha, with 5 seconds to spare. And I forgot to say who's on deck twice now. So Dean, you're up. Matt Hood, you're on deck.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am, let's see, I'll see if I can share my screen. I'll just throw a picture up there. You all, anybody from Baltimore has probably been to Lexington Market. It's the largest of the dwindling public city markets, a tradition that goes back to the 1760s. I'm going to be working with the Market Authority, the Market Center Development Corporation, Seawall, and Johns Hopkins at Baltimore Heritage, who got funding to document the market history. It's been written about, it's been painted, it's been photographed, and there's been some decent things done about it. But I'm gonna try to nail down kind of the market history for use with community engagement and public kind of interaction and interpretation in the new building that's under construction. The old Harbor Place, or Harbor Place style 1980s arcade is gone. New building is going to be go up to the south of it. I'm saying this to all of you folks, because I know a lot of sources and resources and repositories, but please look at your collection for me. I'll be in touch with many of you, but if you have Lexington Market material of any sort, please let me know. I'll put my contact in the chat. So I'd love to unearth new. There's nothing like, uncovering new stories and looking at old stories in a new way. That's it. Thanks.
Excellent, Dean. 30 seconds to spare. I appreciate that.
I yield my time.
Matt, you're up. Matt Hood, and then on deck, Caitlin.
Sorry. Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Hood. A couple of projects I want to promote. The Carroll Mansion has reopened. We are open 12 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. So if you want, come see me there. The Shaw Tower is still closed. That's not due to COVID. That is due to ongoing restoration. We hope to have that opening up in the next couple of months as well. Also, I am part of the new Baltimore Crime Museum. We are currently an online, digital-only museum. You can find us on Facebook at Baltimore Crime Museum, and you can find us on Twitter at the handle Museum Crime. We're a small museum trying to document all facets of Baltimore area crime, ranging from the big murders, the rioting, all the way down to like our next piece is going to be on Blue Sabbath, or the Sabbath laws. We're doing a piece about the founder of Princeton Sport, who got arrested back in 1940 for selling a pair of shoelaces on a Sunday. If that's of interest of you, check us out online, or even better, come volunteer with us. We're currently an all-volunteer museum because we have no money, but like I said, we are always looking for new partners, and that's it.
Great, Matt. Thanks. Even more time to spare. We're rocking and rolling, folks. Kaylin, you're next.
Hi, everybody. Kaylin Thomas. I'm a member of the Small Museum Association. I posted this in the chat, but wanted to remind everybody that on Mondays, I'm on the committee to do the social media. And on Mondays, we do the webinar roundup. So if you guys ever have webinars or Zooms that you think museum people would be interested in, please send them to me. I included my email in the chat. And also you can just come to our page on Mondays and see the webinar posts and just go into the comment section and type in your own webinars if you like. Also, I'm on the board of the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, and they have partnered with Preservation Maryland, and we did a podcast called Ballot and Beyond that actually honors the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. And so please listen in on that. I'll share that in the chat as well. We did voiceovers of bios of the Maryland women who helped in the suffrage movement. Thanks.
Awesome, Kaylin. All right, guys, I volunteered for this because I thought it would be the easiest thing to do, and I keep messing up the on deck part. So, Ennis Smith, you are up, and Mike Franch, you are on deck. Go ahead, Ennis, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully this will be really fast too. So I work for the Maryland Heritage Areas program. Shout out to the Baltimore National Heritage Area, which is your national and local heritage area here in Baltimore, and to Shantae and Danielle. But so I work for the sort of statewide branch of that. And one of the things we do, of course, is provide grants to heritage tourism and heritage education projects throughout the state. For projects in those certified heritage areas. And I just wanted to highlight today really quickly that if you haven't heard of our grant program, please check it out. I just posted the links in the chat. And also, we have made a big change. The Heritage Areas Authority voted to make a big change in July to change our match requirements. So according to the state law that established the program, we still have a 1-to-1 match requirement, meaning organizations that get grants need to be contributing value in some way to the project as well as the grant funds. But we've now changed it so it's any combination of cash and in-kind match. So if it makes sense for your project that it's all volunteer time or it's donated services and materials that are going to be your match, then then that's fine. And we're hoping that that will be a way to reduce some of the barriers for accessing our grant program. And also, last thing, if you know of other barriers that you want to tell us about that have kept you from the grant program, then please let us know. I'll put my email in the chat too.
Great, thanks, Ennis. And Caitlin, just in case you didn't see in the chat, Elizabeth asked if you could post the info. Oh, perfect. So you're working on it. Love it.
Yes, I am. Yes.
All right. And so we have Mike Franches up, and then we have Jen Kotler is on deck. Mike, whenever you're ready.
Hey, thank you. I come to present a problem and to solicit advice. You know, history has been, in a way, a one-way presentation. Now, in the days of Facebook, it can become two ways. I'm the principal administrator of the Baltimore City Historical Society's Baltimore History Facebook page. We have over 8,600 members. Some of our posts are seen by 2,000 to 3,000 people. So we're doing very well on that. We had hoped when we started to be a forum that, you know, a coffee house kind of thing or a coffee shop thing where people could ask questions and get answers and such. And it's worked for that. But it's also become, well, I have to intervene quite often these days, it seems. Stop commenting, delete comments. Some of anything that touches on reasonably current events or anything that touches on race seems to bring a lot of folks out of the woodwork. We get racist comments. We just get people just, you know, lack of civility. I'm all the time saying you can attack someone's arguments, you can't attack their person. So we're doing a lot of removals for purposes of civility, which is necessary for a good discussion. It, of course, also changes the record. I suppose at some point, someone might be interested if they can recover these things and seeing all the racist comments that crop up. But my question for the group is, and I'll put my email address in chat, if you have any suggestions on just how we can teach people, you know, how to have a civil, historically founded discussion. Because a lot of people just, you know, they have no training in this area and they have no idea about how to conduct a discussion of the sort that we're all trying to promote. And I know other sites have had this problem as well. So thank you very much. I look forward to your solutions to my problem, that I'm sure there are just plenty of them out there. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike. So we have Jen is up and Jillian Storms, you are on deck. Jen, at your leisure.
Hey, hi everyone. My name is Jen Kotler. I'm going to try to share my screen and my sound because I have something cool I want to show you. So I work at the Mikulski Archive for Space Telescopes, which is a bit of a different type of archive than where most of you work. It's a data archive. Space missions like Hubble, TESS's exoplanet finder that's currently flying, soon JWST. And so I'm working on a project, it's kind of a side project, and it's called Astronify, and it's all about data sonification. The idea being, how can we make data more accessible to blind and visually impaired audience, both for research, but then also as outreach. And so we're very early in the project, but we have plans to create some museum exhibits, which are currently being worked on, although we haven't been able to get as much feedback as we'd like because of COVID. We haven't been able to do in-person usability testing. But basically, we're creating, taking astronomy data, like of exoplanets and other solar systems, planets and other solar systems, and exploding stars, and we're turning it into sound, and we're trying to create museum exhibits that that are very tactile, that could help explain what this all means. So a few things to note. So this is the current website that I'll post in the chat. It's actually our data, our documentation for the software, but it has some stuff that's interesting. First, I would like to share just a quick example of what sonification sounds like. This is of an exoplanet transit. So what you're hearing is the light, the higher pitch sound is the higher amounts of light, and lower pitch sounds are when the light is blocked. Okay, I'm going to pause that. So then we also just have a way that you can listen to some of these sonifications and test them. And we were recently featured on the Out of the Blocks podcast. If you want to learn more, it's the most recent episode. And basically, I would just, if anyone's interested in tactile exhibits that incorporate sounds and with like sculptural elements, I would love to chat. I will put my information in the chat. So thank you very much.
Great, Jen. Thanks. All right. So we have Jillian, you're up. And then Tiffany Ahalt, you are on deck.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. So I think it's this one, but okay. Is it sharing? Because it doesn't show on my screen.
It's sharing, yep, the Dead Architect
Okay,
Society.
Yeah, so I'm just wanted to say a few things. The Dead Architect Society, it's a research component of the Baltimore Architecture Foundation. I have the website up here and I'll post it in the chat. And it was originally formed in 1989 to uncover the lives of Baltimore's first architects. And it's expanded. It looks at buildings and neighborhoods as well. And we have on our website, we also have architects bios, so it's something to check out. It gives, you know, some important buildings and such. And this coming year is the 150th anniversary of the American Institute of Architects Baltimore chapter. So there'll be a lot of things that will be going on in regards to that. But I currently serve as co-chair, and we meet quarterly. So if you're an architectural geek, you're certainly welcome to join us. We usually have a guest presenter. The one we had this summer, the owner of SJ Martinet spoke, and they have they're the oldest survey company like in Maryland. So they were founded like in 1849, and they showed us all through their digital archives, which was quite expansive, wonderful resource. And our next meeting is going to be November, oh, I had it right here. Oh, Thursday, November 16th. And so if you're interested in coming, I'll post my email in the chat box and just let me know, and I'll send you a link for when we get that up. All right, that's it.
Great. Okay, so we have Tiffany up, and then Marin, you are on deck.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to join you today. I always say that Bmore is one of my best kept secrets. I work a lot with museums and sites in Western Maryland, so I'm always able to share a plethora of resources from you all, so thank you. I'm giving a shameless plug today for the new National Road Museum. It is hopefully going to open next year. Actually, it's funny how things happen that we didn't just open our doors prior to COVID, but we are planning to open in late 2021 in a repurposed Warren Felts hardware store in Boonesboro on Main Street, the National Road. This museum could be described, you know, the story is just telling the story of America's first public works project or the road that built a nation. And certainly this museum will tie into many of the sites there in Baltimore. In the chat room, I'm gonna post a link to about an 8-minute fly-through video, which is a terrific sneak peek, which will show you all of our exhibits, the various themes. Our building is small, it's about 2,000 square feet. But as many of you know, the National Road itself, particularly in Maryland, is 174 miles of an outdoor museum experience itself, including being able to see mile marker number 3 in Baltimore. I want to just give a quick shout out to Shantae and her team at the Baltimore National Heritage Area, certainly Maryland Heritage Areas for helping us with this project, and then the folks at Baltimore Museum as well. So thank you, and look for that.
Right here, mine.
Great, awesome. Just a reminder, if you're not muted and you're not talking, if you could mute just so that way we make sure we don't have any background feedback. Marin, you're up, and then on deck is Katie Wolf.
1 second, I'd like to share my screen. Okay, so I am here to represent the DC History Conference. I am the program for program manager this year. The conference is going to be November 12th through 13th and potentially the 14th because we've had so many great submissions. The theme this year is Echoes, and it's great for other people who are interested in community and local history like we have here, and being so nearby Baltimore, I thought it would make sense to share. We're still putting together the program, but I can give you a little preview that there's a lot of discussion highlighting current events and the resonances with the past. So talking about race, talking about public health, and it should be a really great program. The Eventbrite is not live yet, but I can share the website in the chat, and I'll be able to make sure that everyone has access to the Eventbrite later on. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, Katie, you are up, and Stacy Montgomery, you are on deck.
Alrighty, hi everyone. I would just like to say thank you so much for the wonderful conversation surrounding everything that we talked about today, but in particular about the monuments. I have an interest in documenting them using 3D scanning. I use a technique called photogrammetry, which involves taking thousands of photographs and compiling them into a digital model so that anyone with a link can access. So I'll put that in the chat dialog box. But as you can see, there's a lot of monuments in Baltimore that have been graffitied and painted on. Some the city has been able to clean up rather quickly, but others, like this one in Druid Hill Park, has remained to this day with paint. And for me, it's really important that these things are not erased, that they are kept not only in the photographic documentation as part of the process. You know, I have a record of the photographs of this, but then also the experiential side. You can also experience this in augmented reality. Yeah, I just finished documenting the Robert E. Lee Monument plinth, and I plan to go around and document the plinths because I find sort of the traces, the graffiti, the interactions that the public has had with these monuments to be really significant. And it's kind of sad that either part of the story has been taken away or it completely has been cleaned up. For example, I'm not sure if you guys remember with the Robert E. Lee Memorial, that plinth, there was a lot of really great things happening in terms of public sculpture and demonstrations, and we only have photographs to remember that by. So I'll put my info in the chat. If you guys have any ideas of things you want to document using 3D scanning, hit me up. Anyways, it was really nice meeting all of y'all. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Katie. So up next, we have Stacy Montgomery and Danielle Walter Davis. You are on deck.
Hi, is it okay if I share my screen?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's see. Let me try this one. So my name is Stacy Montgomery. I'm with the Baltimore City Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation, also known as CHAP. And I wanted to share with you all something we put out a few weeks ago when we introduced, or we had our city council hearing about the renewal of the city's historic tax credit, or also known as the CHAP tax credit legislation. We have been fortunate enough over the last year to have Place Economics, which is the foremost and probably the only historic preservation and economics consulting research firm in probably the world. And they did a study of our historic tax credit that's been in place for 20 years. And we released that report back in the beginning of, or late August, I guess. And I wanted to make sure that you all saw it because it has some really great things about what's going on with Baltimore with the city's historic tax credit, some really great data. And we've also put that on our website, which I'll share in the chat when I'm done. I had a couple of great points that I would pull out of that study. First of all, the city's seen over $1.2 billion in private investment through this historic tax credit since the program was created in 1996. It creates jobs, lots and lots of jobs, which is wonderful. And the data on that is, we have a little summary on our website. And also that it creates value for the city. The city actually gets more money back because the credits where there's activity with historic tax credits, it creates what the researcher called a halo effect, where properties around also improve their properties. And so the city gets more back than what they put out in terms of property taxes that are given to projects that undergo this. So aside from a lot of really great before and after images of really transformational, I mean, we know that this credit is used throughout the city in the city's historic designated neighborhoods. We are hoping over the next year, we're gonna have a renewal of the program for 1 year, and over the next year, we're gonna study how we can make it even more effective. But we know as we travel into East Baltimore and a little bit, Central and West Baltimore, it can be really transformative. It can be used to transform entire vacant blocks into revitalize housing for new people and for people who've been living there, and help legacy homeowners increase the value of their property without doing anything at all. So we're hoping to look over the next year how to make the program even more effective as we introduce new legislation and work with the new administration to make it a great program. But I just want to make sure that you all see this study. It is fantastic. It's full of such great information, and it shows what a strong program and how much historic preservation is doing for Baltimore City. So please take a look at it, and I'll share the link in the chat now. Thank you.
Great. And so Danielle was signed up in error. So Allison is actually on, it's your turns now. And LaDon Black wanted to slide in at the end. So if it's okay if we go over by a minute or so, I hope that's okay from everyone. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Alison Fischbach. I'm with Towson University's Special Collections and Archives. And we have been working on a project to digitize our printmaking letterpress collection. So I have here part of that. We've created a collection online that you can access through Omeka. But a big part of this project was bringing the blocks out of our collections and actually having students use them in the letterpress classroom. That was kind of completely derailed by COVID, but we had a couple of successes with printing those. But my main question here is whether anybody has taken collections out of the archives and had items be used in a classroom or other setting. I'd be really interested in learning more about that because we had a lot of concerns, but we thought that using these materials as they were originally intended was really important for the learning process. And then also this collection was about 70 blocks, but the original collection was about 200. So also if anyone has leads on area collections of printmaking materials, I'd be really interested in seeing them, not only to see if maybe some of our blocks ended up there, but learning more about local printers in the 40s and 50s. Most of this blocks are from the about 30s to the 70s, and finding out what foundries or what shops these might have been used at. So please feel free to look at our collection online, but contact me if you have any information on this. It's not something I have been super tapped into before, but I'd really like to learn more. So I'll drop a link into the notes, but thank you.
All right, great. And so LaDon Black wanted to speak for the Heritage Area real quick. LaDon, you just have like a minute or so since we're running over. But go ahead.
No problem. I'll be brief. LaDon Black with the Baltimore National Heritage Area. Just wanted to say that our grants are open. Our small capital grant program and also our neighborhood placemaking grants are both open. So you can check out information at explorebaltimore.org. Coming up Monday, we are going to be on MPT with our short film, By Any Means Necessary, Stories of Survival, that tells the other side of the Squeegee youth story. So make sure you check it out at 9 p.m. And then this weekend, we will be at the Cross Street Market with our Baltimore themed reusable shopping bags. So we're being good to the environment, but also showcasing a lot of Baltimore photographers' work. All information can be found on our social media, which is Bmore NHA, and also at explorebaltimore.org. Thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, LaDon. So that's great. That was everyone. Thanks so much for volunteering and wanting to speak about your projects. This is awesome. And I guess I'll throw it back to Johns to move us on to our last and final thing.
Thanks, Jessica. And excuse me, of course, we will always have time for one more lightning talk, especially if it involves giving away money and free stuff. So that we can, we'll go on forever with those kind of things. All right, we are going to roll right into our final session. No break this time. I guess the Zoom host giveth and the Zoom host taketh away. So we got an extra 4 minutes early on, and we get no break this time. So I am going to turn it over to, it's Kate and Kaylin, I believe, who are going to kind of lead us through a debrief, and then are going to show us how we can have like a meet and greet via Zoom to the greatest extent possible. All right, Kate, Kaylin, it's all yours.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Drabinski. I teach gender and sexuality studies at UMBC, and I'm a history buff, so that's how I got involved with this. And Kaylin and I have some reflection questions to ask to the group, and you can either unmute and talk like we've been doing all day, or write in the chat. And I'm going to turn it over to Kaylin to introduce herself and get us started with questions.
Hey everybody, Kaylin Thomas again. My background is in journalism, having worked at CNN for 17 years as a reporter, and also worked in the museum field as a museum programming director. So I've kind of melded the two together with the freelance work that I do now, doing a lot of writing about cultural heritage tourism sites. Love historic preservation, and excited about this unconference, and excited to get started. So the first thing I want to ask everybody is, what did you really like about the conference in general, and was there anything that was your favorite?
I just wanted to go first real fast, even though I'm on the planning committee, so technically you would think I would approve of this automatically. But I will say I woke up this morning really tired, and after a really long week not wanting to do this, but I kind of had to. And you know what, as soon as I got my coffee and we started, I was did a 180. I think this has been really great. I think the this format really worked well for what Bmore Historic was. I think it still kept the essence of it. And even though we had around 60 some participants at one point, at some point, it still felt like an intimate conversation. And I really appreciated that. And honestly, I didn't realize, I mean, of course I knew I missed talking to people, but I didn't realize how much I missed seeing and hearing and listening to colleagues and people I know. So this has been really great, and honestly, just a really refreshing Friday morning. So thanks for so much participation. It's been really wonderful to be a part of it.
Agreed, yeah. Anybody else?
I'll chime in here. I am a history buff. I'm a journalist also. But I wanted to say that while I thoroughly enjoyed most of this morning, I wasn't sure when I signed up exactly what to expect. And from the kind of outsider perspective, this whole conversation was intriguing if you are a historian or a museum person or something like that, but it didn't really feel like it was open to the wide audience of just lay people. So that's something to think about when you're marketing Bmore Historic in the future. Is it for the practitioners, or are you offering something also for just a layperson interested in Baltimore history?
Good comment. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, then Kate has the next question.
I have the next question. We got this started already, in fact. What could improve, and what would you like to see in our next conference, whether it's in person or online? And also curious if other people had that sensation of, if you're not a professional practitioner, if you also felt that that kind of gap. And does anyone have any ideas about how to bridge that? Because a lot of people who go to Bmore Historic, do have this is your job, and so it is for professionals in some way, but like, it's not my job. So yeah, does anybody have any ideas about how to sort of bridge that gap? or recommendations in general?
I mean, hi. Sorry, did I interrupt somebody?
No.
Hi, I'm Tara Wink. I'm from the University of Maryland, Baltimore. I'm a historical collections librarian and archivist there. I think I have a comment or a suggestion that could help bridge that gap a little bit. I also am the chair-elect for an organization called the Mid-Atlantic Regional Archives Conference. And in the past, I went to a fantastic session there that was actually presenters from the opposite side of things, so users rather than archivists presenting their experiences of using the archives. So perhaps, I know that this is an unconference and you don't normally solicit presentations, but maybe having a special segment of users and how they've experienced using our collections or using a museum or whatever the case may be, present to us professionals would be beneficial. I know that I got so much out of that experience, and it changed the way I approach working with patrons. So just a suggestion. This is only my second time attending, and I appreciate it. It's been great to see people that I don't normally see. So thank you.
I think that's a great idea. I don't want to go to any more Zoom events. So what else, what are we going to do now, as a user? I mean, I'm really enjoying this one, but I think getting feedback or having presentations facilitated by users is a great idea. Users that's a weird word, but you know what I mean. Patrons, visitors. Anybody else have any ideas for things that you might want to see at future Bmore Historics?
So I would like to say that I'm not a professional. I'm a history buff. And lover of Baltimore and all things Baltimorean history. And I learned a huge amount. I collected so many links and pages and places to go. And yeah, some of it was not relevant to me and some of it was over my head, but I really, really enjoyed it. And I will try to come again. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else, or does anybody have any suggestions for online conferences? This was the first one we did. I don't think it'll be the last one. If there are any you've been to that you thought did something that we might integrate.
Hey, Kate, could we throw out the question for everybody about the length of this? Because we could do, we talked about, could we do fewer sessions, more sessions, and then more breakout? I mean, how do you get participation in this format, which we all suddenly, we get exhausted after a while? So any
Yeah, that's a great question. And I see Cassie's addressed this already in the chat, more breakout sessions. And longer day, Cassie, do you mean longer day, like have more breaks, or you just wanted to keep going into the afternoon because it's so fun?
It's fun, go longer into the afternoon, but I think that having multiple places where we can go when we're physically there is often part of the fun and the enjoyment of learning something new is being able to do that. And the nature of an unconference is such that we do things that are not conference-like, okay? And so this felt much more conference-like than the in-person events do. There were, people who are uncomfortable with silence and, would talk and present, and it makes it hard when you know that there's 60 other people at least in the room to open up. And I really appreciate the fact that everybody was willing to include good information and feedback in the chat, but it is now disconnected from what was going on at the time that it was written. So, and I'm not sure how, whether it is time stamped when it gets saved and uploaded and whatever, but that that personal nature of all the best work at an unconference get done when you're sitting in the back of the room having coffee and bagel.
Yeah, trying to reproduce the coffee and bagel part is really challenging. As a teacher, I teach these synchronous classes every week, and trying to reproduce the after class hang around, say a few things is really challenging. So I think part of what we're identifying is the difficulty of the digital format, the remote format. But I think that breakout rooms are a thing that might help groups have smaller conversations. It's hard to do because we don't, at the unconference, we're able to physically move around, and here it's much harder to do, but I think that's really good advice.
So, sorry, me again. Another suggestion, I'm reading the chat. If you do multiple days, have a theme per day, and people can decide to join in that day or not. So one of the days for this conference could have been, it's failing me, the Confederate Monuments and the Columbus Monuments. And if people who are interested in that discussion could tune in for that day, but maybe not for the other two. I don't know. I am volunteering to help this, aren't I?
Yeah, that's a lot of work, right? Because then
it is a lot of work. I know.
Maybe what we need in a digital Bmore Historic is a Bmore Historic series. Maybe that's something that we would do. Because I see that also the suggestion of so that's a good idea. If you are speaking,
Sorry.
awesome.
I do have one question about the conference.
Great.
About posting. The video is one thing, but will the chats be posted? Because it occurred to me, a lot of people are putting their personal email in, and I don't know if everybody's thinking about that now being in the public terrain. Because if it's in a way that can be captured, then it tends to be picked up by spam bots, and that's to get all that stuff. So I'm just wondering how the chat is going to be shared in the public realm.
That's a good question, and I have no idea. Molly, have you thought about that?
Yeah, I had not thought about that, so thank you, Jillian. That is a good question. And maybe one thing we'll do instead then is just email the chat to all of the participants so that everyone here can still access all of these great tools, but it's not out in the world.
Yeah, I don't think the chat goes along with the video, but the transcript will pick up what's being said. I don't think the chat goes along with it, though.
Yeah, I think what Jillian was referring to was I was going to post the transcript of the chat somewhere, but she raises a great point. So it will be in an email to all of the participants instead.
I believe
you have to leave something. You have to leave something for people who don't participate. They if they want to get the chats, they gotta be here. There's gotta be something that's not being just given out for all those who aren't around. So I'm just saying, and I am worried about spamming when it comes to getting everybody's email out there. So
I believe when the chat is saved, it is editable. So if anybody posted something that they strongly regret or does not wish to be publicly available later, you can send us a message and we can take that out.
I see a couple suggestions in the chat. One about knowing in advance the confirmed sessions, and I don't remember, Molly, was the session where was that emailed out to participants? Because I think I forgot to register. Because that's something we could easily solve.
Yeah, I saw that too. No, after we decided the sessions, we did not, I'm sorry, that might have been my fault. We did not notify people, but we did update it on the website. But yes, I think maybe we should send out an email beforehand saying here are what the final sessions are.
Good. Thank you. And then a lot of suggestions for multiple Zoom rooms, have overlapping sessions and have time during because one of the things that makes the unconference so fun is that, you go and you decide the morning of what you want to talk about. One of the things that has made that hard in the past is it seems like a 50-50 split. Some are like, we need more structure. And it takes so much time at the beginning of the unconference to figure out the schedule. So some people are fine with that, and other people want the structure. So it is hard to meet everybody's needs. But I think I'm hoping that we can do this in person next year, because I really do miss the hanging out part. Yeah. Any other suggestions? I mean, I think one of the reasons we didn't have multiple Zoom links and rooms was just simply being overwhelmed by the logistics of this in a small group of volunteers. So I think that's, you know, at least from my perspective, if I'm being honest, that's why it looked like this. Any other suggestions for improvement or things you want to see?
Yeah, I just add, you all did a great job today. I enjoyed it. This is my first time attending. And I wanted to just note that possibly I agree with folks who were saying that maybe multiple days for shorter sessions, but perhaps one of the, something's happened with my connection, perhaps one of the options for a topic or a theme might be being at a particular location, maybe doing some streaming. So again, that takes more in terms of logistics, but if that's possible, that may be something to consider. So maybe some of the site in the area that folks talked about today. That's all.
All right, you were breaking up a little bit, but what I heard was maybe shorter sessions, streaming, things you can pop in and out of, but I don't know if it was for everybody, but you were breaking up a little bit. Was that a decent summary? No tech issues until there are tech issues. I accidentally turned my own computer off during my first synchronous teaching class, so you're doing great. Any other suggestions? All right, well then I'm going to kick it back to Kaylin to talk about what sessions or things we might want to talk about as Bmore Historic in the future.
Oh, Kaylin, you're muted.
Thank you. We wanted to find out if you guys had got any great ideas from these sessions or any solutions to problems during these sessions. Anybody? Okay.
Well, when there was mention of resources for educators, I got a lot out of that. So I took quite a few notes about things I can take back to the classroom.
That's great. I wrote a lot of notes, but it's just because I have so much passion for historic preservation that I pretty much wrote down notes about everything. So, but I also wanted to find out if you guys felt like any of these sessions really touched something that you're dealing with in your workday, you know, wherever it is that you work. Was there anything that really touched on something that you have to deal with at work?
I would say, again, coming from the Walters, this question of Confederate legacy was definitely related to some of the work that we are currently trying to do. But I would also say, just for the lightning rounds, I'm working in the education department at the Walters to create resources for Baltimore City schools, and we have been incorporating links from other places as like extension activities, but this has given me a lot of other ideas for different ways that we can kind of incorporate some of the themes that we're talking about. with work that's already being done by some of you. So that's very exciting to me.
Yeah, that's great.
The ethical discussion was very interesting as well. I didn't really contribute much, but it was nice to hear like some of the same things that I'm dealing with. It was therapy. I'll just leave it at that. It was nice to hear like other people grappling with these similar questions and trying to figure out solutions. I don't think we came up with solutions necessarily, but it was nice to just listen to that conversation. And I also really, really thoroughly enjoyed the monuments discussion and how thoughtful everyone was there.
Yeah, I really did too. I feel like that's another one where we could, you know, have another conversation in the future. Speaking of future, I'm going to throw it back to Kate for
catching the ball from Taylor. What are some ways that that you all would like to follow up with each other, or what kind of connections do you want to make coming out of this? It's hard to do because ordinarily we would now break and we would go somewhere for coffee or a beer and we would just chat, and now we're in this remote environment. But does anyone have ideas about how they might want to follow up with each other or make connections, or like continue the connections that you've made here today?
Is it possible to distribute contact information for those participants who are willing to share?
Molly, is that a possibility?
It's certainly technically a possibility. Is everyone okay with that on like ethical reasons? I mean, I don't know. Just throwing that out there. I can certainly do it. I don't know why it wouldn't be, but I want to keep that open.
So let me suggest this for a future conference, that you create a spreadsheet, a Google sheet right there, that everybody can type in their name, their contact information, how they want to be contacted, and what, you know, maybe what their specialty is. So they control the message they want to give. And if they don't want to be known, they don't have to be known. We have the tools as a collaboration tool to be able to have everybody contribute to that as they see. You just provide the columns and people fill in.
That's a great idea.
Yep.
For the future.
For the future, absolutely.
Could that
today? I will say, I'm seeing that in the chat, people saying that you need to get permission, and I think that that's likely true. I'm going to secretly say that all of your email addresses are easily findable on the internet, but not our names and not our specialties and areas of interest. I think that would be really important. So great idea for next year.
I feel like maybe, and tell me if this is a terrible idea, but we could just, if people want to share their emails, like each person right now could type in their stuff into the chat, if you're comfortable with that. Because this chat will be, I mean, so there's only 45 people left, but anyways.
Yeah, that's a good idea. At least you'll have it from some of the 45, right?
And Alison just pointed out a really good idea that with the Bmore Historic Facebook page, we'd encourage you to become a fan of that page, and that it's a good place to find people who have attended or did attend this conference too, to contact them there. Not everyone has Facebook, so it's not a perfect solution.
And I'm seeing in the chat, someone who did not realize we were going to be recording it and posting it online, and that, you know, and I think that's a good point. If we're going to do that, that we need to get everyone's permission, that we talked about that earlier. Yeah, I didn't speak up during that conversation, but I think that recording everything and having everything be available to watch, we're all just sort of, a lot of us are just doing it as a knee-jerk thing, but I'm not sure it always needs to be done. We wouldn't, if you were unable to make Bmore Historic in the olden times, you just wouldn't be there, but you could see the notes that people took on Google Docs. And yeah, and it brings up a ton of issues in terms of privacy, and especially when we're talking about issues that have to do with our workplace or that are controversial. So yes, Anonymous, I hear you.
Hey, can I, as everybody's sort of ruminating over this now and even after we break up, one of the things that we talked about in favor of recording it is that on YouTube, the session will provide subtitles. And so if that's something that somebody needs out there, this was sort of our inexpensive way to be able to provide that, that we couldn't easily do through Zoom. And so that's, you know, there's no easy answers to any of the, there are no easy answers to any of these questions, but that was, that there are multiple ways to be able to provide accessibility, but not very many that are free. And so that was kind of a consideration. I just want to kind of, as everybody's rolling their heads around this, that's another thing that, that to put in the mix.
Yeah. Any other ideas for how we can stay connected? I think the spreadsheet that we can publicly fill out, like, or, you know, we can fill out when we're at the conference is a must do for next year. I think that's a wonderful idea. And otherwise, let's meet each other on the Facebook page or the connections that we've made already. So those are all the wrap-up questions we had planned for today. So if you'd like to hang around in this Zoom room and talk about something else, you can, or we can say our goodbyes and see you in person soon, I hope. And Johns, we'll see you in the next 5-minute history.
Gotta go start recording.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Molly, do you have any goodbyes for us? Or should we just?
Sure. Well, I think most everything has been said. We'll send an email and a follow-up survey to everybody, and we look forward to seeing you guys, you know, next year, maybe, you know, or before then. Well, that, okay.
Yes, thanks everybody.
Bye.
See you all. Bye.
So long, everybody.